1.1 Commission. People working on commission earn a percentage of their sales. The percentage can vary from job to job. People working on commission get paid by their companies to sell products. So say you sell appliances. If you sell $1,000 worth of appliances and you work on commission, you get a percentage of the amount of product that you sell as income. Now, sometimes sometimes people work on straight commission, and sometimes people work on commission plus a salary. And the most security happens when you have a salary that you're guaranteed, then you get paid commission on top of that. A kind of example of that is tips. Now, what makes it a little bit different, like if you're a waitress or a server, now what makes it a little bit different is that the company does not pay you the percentage, but the customer pays you a percentage tip. So you would get your income, okay, so you would get your regular hourly wage. And then you would add the tips, which ranges anywhere between 10 or truly 0. Sometimes you don't get tips at all, 10 to 20% on average. 28% of the bill as a tip. So that's kind of an example of a commission that you might even experience in your lifetime. So the steps are not super complicated. First things first, you need to determine the total sales. Second thing is you want to change the commission percent into a decimal. Now remember, we're always going to be dividing by 100, which just means that you move over the decimal place 2 places. So if you're going from 5%, I'm just going to do this a little bit of a different way. So 5%, you're moving over 2 decimal places. So we're going to go here and then here. So that's the new decimal place. Okay, so 5% equals 0.05, just like that. Oh, let's get that back there. Step number 3 is multiply the total sales by the percent as a decimal. And the fourth step is kind of optional if the question asks for it. Add any additional salary if applicable. So in this first one right here, David earns 7.5% commission on his sales. If he sells $1,500, what is his gross pay? So first things first, we need to change that. The first step is already done for us because we know that it's $1,500. Actually, let me just put this back here. So I'm going to change my color here and I'm going to say, all right, yep. We have determined the total amount of sales. It is $1,500. Now change the decimals. Change the commission percent as a decimal. So I'm going to check mark this in red. So I'm going to say, okay, 7.5% is the same thing as we're going to move the decimal place over 2 times. So it's going to be 0.075. Now don't get thrown off by like the decimal when it comes to percent. When I'm moving this over, that doesn't 2 times. That doesn't have it just means that there will be a number after the 7. It doesn't affect it anything other than that. So I know that my decimal is going to be 0.075. Now the third one is multiply the total sales by the percent as a decimal. Now I'm going to do this step in blue. So I'm going to say, so the total sales is going to be 1,500 times 0.075, and we get a total of $112.50. Okay, now the option here is add any additional salary if possible. We don't have to worry about that step because that's not a part of the question. So I can put a box around this answer. Something that's really important is always remember in the final answer The final answer, it needs units. Okay. All right, so let's keep consistent with these colors here. John sells a couch for $1,200 and a love seat for $800. If he earns 7.5% commission, what is his gross pay? So step number 1 we're going to do in green, and that is determine the total sales. So I'm going to say total sales is going to be 1,200 plus 800. That is 2,000. Now I put a dollar sign here just because that's what it was, but you don't have to, during your process work, you don't have to have the units, just the final answer needs it. Now we know from the question above, 7.5% is the same thing as 0.075. Now we need to multiply the sales by the commission as a percent. We're going to do that in green. Sorry, we're going to do that in blue. So we're going to say 2,000 times 0.075, and that will be 150. So when I get to my final answer, what I want to do is I want to put a box around it. Okay, so this one is a bit of a spicy meatball for several reasons. We have two different dollar amounts, and we have our commission percentage as a fraction. So we're going to step this out, and we're going to read through the question carefully, and we'll figure out what we need to do here. So Kim earns $125 per day. So that's her salary, no matter what. Plus 3 3/4% on her sales. She sells a car for $25,000. What is her gross pay? So first things first, this 125 is the additional salary piece, so that's the optional step number 4 that we have here. So if she sells a car for, so this is what her sales are today. So step 1 is find the sales, and that's going to be 25,000. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tease out this right here. So I have 3 3/4%. Now what is 3/4 as a decimal? I'm going to bring up my calculator here, and I'm going to say the way that I get from a fraction to a decimal is I take the numerator, which is 3, and then I divide it by 4, and I get 0.75. Okay, so I'm going to say 3 3/4 is going to be 3.75%. Now it kind of looks like what we've been dealing with before, 7.5 and 7.5 above. All we need to do here now is we need to move the decimal place over. I'm going to just change the color here. I'm going to change that to black. I'm going to go 1, 2. So as a decimal, that is going to be 0. We've left room for one spot here, 0.0375. This is what we want to multiply by her sales. So then what we do, come on, bud. There we go. We want to say 25,000 times 0.0375, and that's going to be 937.5. Now on your calculator it's going to say 0.5, but really it should be, because we're dealing with money, you should have 2 decimal places for that. That's something that's really important. Okay, so now what we need to do, we've done all 3 steps, and now we need to go to the 4th step. So we need to, I'm going to change to purple here. And I'm going to say, okay, 125 plus 937.50 for a total of 1,062.50. Now this right here is my final answer. So that's all you need to do for this. Now there are questions that are very close in the booklet. It's the next page. And if you would like to know what, just to check your answers with me, come on up and we can share the answer key for the worksheet. Great, have fun.